guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be watching a video called How Different Are Swiss German and Standard German. I know that, for instance, Austria, that also speaks German, I've had conversations with people and they've been like, no, if you like Standard German is very different from the language they speak there. And to the point where there are some words that you'll be able to recognize, but I think it's mostly the way when you're speaking, it's very difficult to understand each other. And to the point where it's like, I know that you're speaking like German, which is supposedly, a language that I speak, but I can't really understand you. So I'm wondering if that's the case with the Swiss German. And start.
Learners of German are often surprised to discover just how different spoken German can be depending on where you go. What we call German includes both Standard German and a diverse range of dialects that differ throughout the German-speaking regions. One of the most famous examples of this is Swiss German, the dialects spoken in Switzerland. They're often different enough that speakers of Standard German can't understand them. Swiss German is really a geographic grouping of all the dialects spoken in Switzerland, rather than a linguistic grouping. There are cases in which Swiss German dialects are more similar to dialects spoken across the border in Germany, Austria, Liechtenstein, or South Tyrol than they are to other Swiss dialects that are further away. The dialects of Switzerland are Alemannic dialects, which is a subgroup of Upper German. There are 4 subgroups within Alemannic: Swabian, Low Alemannic, High Alemannic, and Highest Alemannic. It's a dialect continuum, getting further from Standard German as you move southward. In Switzerland, there are mainly High Alemannic and Highest Alemannic dialects, with a pocket of Low Alemannic around the city of Basel. There's quite a lot of variation amongst Swiss German dialects. The speaker in this video comes from the Zurich area.
Okay, so the capital?
In Switzerland, people almost exclusively use their dialect in casual situations, as opposed to in Germany, where there's been more of a shift towards Standard German. In formal situations and in writing, they use Swiss Standard German, which is almost the same as the Standard German used in Germany, with some minor differences.
Okay, so almost
There is no sharp S to represent the sound S. It's written with double S instead. Some different vocabulary is used. Yes, even in the written language. For example,
Reservation
instead of
Reservierung.
It sounds totally different.
Meaning hospital instead of Standard German.
Krankenhaus.
This is almost French.
Meaning bicycle instead of Standard German.
Fahrrad. Jupe.
Meaning skirt instead of Standard German.
Rock.
These words are borrowings from French.
Yeah, I was saying that.
But the real differences lie in the Swiss German dialects, including a lot of different words. Hello.
Grüezi.
This is a contraction of the old polite expression
Ich grüße Sie.
meaning I greet you. Bye.
Adieu.
Instead of Standard German,
Tschüss.
excuse me.
Excusez.
This comes from French, excusez.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Merci.
Instead of Standard German,
Danke.
or one of its
many
variants.
French things.
This word comes from French, of course. Another option is
Merci vielmal.
vielmal means many times. A little bit,
Spitzeli.
rather than Standard German.
Ein bisschen.
In Standard German, the verb meaning to run is
Laufen.
in Swiss German, there's the verb
Laufe.
but it actually means walk. The verb meaning to run in Swiss German is
Ranne.
it has a
different
cognate in
meaning.
Standard German,
Rennen.
which is used more with the sense of to race or to move quickly. By the way, notice that the Standard German infinitive form of verbs ends in n, while the Swiss German infinitives don't have the n at the end.
They don't have anything.
The verb meaning to work in Standard German,
Arbeiten.
in Swiss German,
Schaffe.
in Standard German, this verb normally means to create or to manage to do something. Those are just a few examples. There are far too many different words to list them all here.
Yeah, but there's a lot then.
One difference is that Alemannic dialects, for the most part, fully underwent the High German consonant shift.
What is that?
A change in consonant sounds that occurred during the development of Old High German. Standard German has some of these changes, but not all. One change that most Swiss dialects underwent, but Standard German didn't, was the shift from k to kh, or ch, at the beginning of words, when doubled, after r or l, and after m or n. For example, thanks in Standard German,
Danke.
and in Swiss German,
Danke.
child
it
in
sounds
Standard
very
German,
different. It's
Kind.
and in Swiss German.
Kind.
yeah.
Notice that the vowel is also different, being raised in Swiss German. There are sometimes differences between monophthongs and diphthongs. Listen to the words for house and pay attention to the vowel sounds. In Standard German,
Haus.
and in Swiss German.
Hus.
Swiss German dialects did not undergo the new High German diphthongization,
I love
in
they're
which
almost
certain vowels
written, they're
became
almost the same.
diphthongs. Swiss German maintains the monophthongs of Middle High German. The long vowels I, U, and Ü became I, Au, and Oi. To say my house, in Standard German you would say,
Mein Haus.
while in Swiss German you would say,
Mis Hus.
the plural, houses, in Standard German would be,
Häuser.
in Swiss German it would
Totally.
be.
Hüser.
Oh my god, they sound so different.
Conversely, there are some diphthongs that became monophthongs in Standard German, but remain diphthongs in Swiss German. Ihr, Ur, and Ür, each with a schwa in second position, became I, U, and Ü. For example, the word for love. In Standard German it's,
Liebe.
while in Swiss German it's.
Liebe.
The word for good.
It's-
In Standard German it's,
Gut.
while in Swiss German it's.
Gut.
The word for foot. In Standard German it's,
Fuß.
and in Swiss German it's.
Fuß.
It's so funny.
Grammar.
It's like the same, but
Another
not
difference
really.
is that Swiss German does not have a preterite tense. Instead, they use the perfect tense. For example,
Okay.
the sentence meaning, yesterday I was at home. In Standard German, it's,
Gestern war ich zu Hause.
word for word, it's, yesterday was I at home. In Swiss German, it's,
Gestern bin ich daheim gsi.
word for word, that's, yesterday am I at home been. Word for word in Standard German, this would be,
Gestern bin ich zu Hause gewesen.
but it would literally mean, yesterday I have been at home. Note that I is an unstressed form of ich when it comes after the verb.
It's true.
You'll probably also notice differences in the forms of verbs.
Yeah,
An
totally
example
different.
that might have jumped out at you is Standard German
Gewesen.
versus Swiss German.
Gsi.
They are both the past participle of the verb meaning to be.
Okay.
In Swiss German, the verb meaning to go is doubled when used before another verb. For instance, if you want to say, I go traveling, you would say,
Ich gang go reisen.
the
Yeah, you
first
have
go
to do it
here
twice.
is the first person singular present tense form, and the second one is the infinitive. In Standard German, you would say,
Ich gehe reisen.
a construction like this is also used for the verbs meaning to come,
Ko.
let,
La.
and begin.
Anfahren.
Come eat.
Komm ko essen.
Chum
Oh my God,
is
this
the
sounds so
singular
complicated.
imperative form, and cho is the infinitive.
This I
Another
think is quite
difference lies in the
complicated.
diminutive suffix, which expresses a smaller, cuter, or younger version of the noun. In Standard German, it's
Lein.
or,
Chen.
while in Swiss German, it's.
Li.
Totally
In Standard
different.
German, a small mouse is.
Mäuslein.
Oh my
In
god, I
Swiss
love that
German,
word.
it's.
Müsli.
This
Oh my
could
God, like the
result in
cereal.
some funny confusion because in Standard German
Müsli.
refers to muesli, the kind of
Yes,
food.
that's exactly
in
what I
Swiss
said.
German, the food is called.
Müsli.
This difference is a result
Very
of
different,
one
no,
of
yeah,
the
it is.
sound shifts I mentioned earlier. The diphthong became a monophthong in Standard German. A little house. In Standard German, it's.
Häuslein.
Or,
Häuschen.
while in Swiss German, it's.
Hüsli.
But it's
Next,
you just add
rather than all the
Lee.
different relative pronouns used in Standard German, in Swiss German there's only one relative clause marker.
Wo.
For
And what's
example, with the
wo?
meaning
What
of
does it
the
mean?
friend that I always go drinking with. In Standard German,
Der Freund, mit dem ich immer saufen gehe.
word for word it's the friend with whom I always drink, infinitive, go. In Swiss German it's
Der Freund, wo ich immer mit dem gang go saufen.
word for word it's the friend
That's the
that
same.
I always with him go drink. This
So
form is a
weird.
contraction of wo and ich, or its unstressed form I.
Oh,
Notice
they
that
also do
the Swiss German
contractions.
relative clause has something called a resumptive pronoun, a pronoun that restates the person or thing that you're talking about. Him refers back to.
Der Freund.
Yeah, like the
The
friend.
standard German relative clause doesn't have a resumptive pronoun.
No.
Now let's look at some sentences and see what we find. These sentences mean we went fishing and caught lots of fish. In standard German,
Wir gingen angeln und fingen viele Fische.
word for word it's we went fishing and caught lots fish. In Swiss German it's
Wir sind go fischen gegangen und haben viel Fisch gefangen.
word for word it's
It's
we
switched.
are go infinitive, fish infinitive, gone and have lots fish caught. First, notice the different first-person plural pronouns.
Yeah,
the
it's-
Swiss German pronoun resembles the first singular dative pronoun in both Standard German and Swiss German. Next, notice that the Standard German sentence has the preterite tense, or the simple past tense, while
Yeah.
the Swiss German sentence uses the perfect tense instead,
It's a lot
as
of
we saw
things.
before.
Yeah.
And again, we see that the verb meaning go is doubled when used with another
Twice.
verb, in the verb phrase meaning go fishing. The word for fishing is also different. In Standard German, the usual word is angeln, while in Swiss German it's Fische. These sentences mean, I want to buy the kitten we saw at the pet shop.
Okay.
In Standard German,
Ich will das Kätzchen kaufen, das wir in der Tierhandlung gesehen haben.
word for word it's, I want the kitten by, infinitive, that we in the pet shop seen have. In Swiss
Sounds so
German
strange.
it's,
Ich will das Kätzchen kaufen, wo wir in der Tierhandlung gesehen haben.
word for word it's, I want the kitten by, infinitive, that we in the pet shop seen have. First, notice the different words meaning want, will in Standard German and wait in Swiss German. Next, we see that the definite article is shortened in Swiss German. Then notice the different diminutive forms of the word for cat, which
Completely
mean
different.
kitten.
And
In
also the
Standard
verb.
German, Kätzchen, and in Swiss German,
Kätzli.
Katzli. And again, notice that the initial consonant is different. K in Standard German and ch in Swiss German. We see that same difference in kaufen and kaufe. And again, we see that the Swiss German infinitive lacks the final
different,
N.
yeah.
Next, again, we see the different relative clause marker in Swiss German, wo, and that it again contracts with the personal
Oh,
pronoun.
of course, it's a
Wo
contraction.
plus mir becomes vomer. After that, we see ide, meaning in the, written as one word. Then we
It's
see a
the yes
slightly
in the
different form
English.
of the word for pet shop. Then we see different forms of the past participle of the verb meaning to see. And again, we see that the
I think
present
they're
tense of
pronounced
the
very
auxiliary
similarly.
verb meaning to have has a different form of the first person plural conjugation. As you can see, Swiss German dialects are fairly different from Standard German.
I would say a
Of
lot
course,
different.
They're closely related, and if Swiss German had a different name, like just Swiss, we'd probably say, wow, Swiss and German are so similar. But because it's called
Not
Swiss
really.
German, the differences stand out to us.
Yeah.
Remember that Swiss German dialects are Alemannic dialects, which are part of the Upper German branch of High German.
Yeah, they
Some
talk the
people
same
believe
family.
that Alemannic and also Bavarian are different languages from Standard German. But because they're
Oh.
closely related to it, and because Standard German is the written and formal language that's used in combination with them, they are normally considered part of the German language. The
That's
question of the day.
interesting.
For German speakers outside of Switzerland, how well do you understand Swiss German? How different is it from your usual way of speaking, whether that's Standard German or
I'm so
dialect?
curious because I
And
would
for
say-
Swiss German speakers, how easy is it to communicate with German speakers from other parts of Switzerland and those from outside of Switzerland? Do you usually use Standard German with speakers of different dialects? If you're excited to learn German, and to be clear, I mean Standard German, I highly
Yeah, not
recommend you
Swiss.
check out the course German Uncovered that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. German Uncovered was created by Ollie Richards, a major figure in the language learning community who pioneered a unique approach to language learning using stories. You may have seen some of his
stories.
best-selling books at your local bookshop or on Amazon. His Uncovered courses are based on the same philosophy of story learning, but they're much more extensive and are designed to take you from a beginner level up to the B1 level, which is lower intermediate. The course consists of 20 chapters of a story, with each chapter containing not only a core reading and listening section, but also additional video lessons and exercises that build on the core material. If you're tired of boring apps and simple grammar-based translation, try the story learning approach with German Uncovered. Click the link in the description for more information. Right now, it's time to say thanks to the LangFocus Patreon supporters, especially these ones right here on the screen, because they are the top tier Patreon supporters. LangFocus patrons make it much easier to keep this channel going month after month, so many special thanks to them. And to everyone, thank you for watching and have a nice day.
Oh, I thought it was gonna say like have a nice day in Swiss German. Okay, so this was incredibly interesting. I said at the beginning, like, yes, I think it's gonna be like for English, for German speaking standard German speaking people, it's very different and very hard to understand like other dialects. And I like apparently like, well, he poses a question, but I think they're very different. You know, just it's weird because it's like when you're seeing it like compared with each other, like especially like the sentences. like most of them, it's like they're very similar, like to the point where you're like, wow, like they're very similar. But but when you're like when they're pronouncing it, it sounds totally different, like insanely different, to the point where I think I can recognize, when someone speaks like standard German, I think I'm not gonna go like fully confident like, oh yeah, but I think I'm pretty sure I would say I would recognize like, yes, I know that you're speaking German. But with Swiss German, I don't know if I would be able to recognize like, oh, you're speaking Swiss German. I don't think I would be able to recognize it, actually. I think I would be like, I don't know what language you're speaking. It sounds like German, but it doesn't really at the same time. It's kind of weird. Maybe I would think, no, I was gonna say, maybe it sounds like Dutch. No, but it doesn't. It sounds similar like to German, but it's not. Like the pronunciation is so different to the point where it's like, I know that you're not speaking German. There's a lot of like German sounds that I think that Swiss German doesn't have. At least that's what I think. Again, I could be totally wrong because I don't speak either language, but they don't really sound that similar. The only similarity, it's like when you're seeing them like written and like when you see one and then the other, it's when you're like, oh, you know what, they kind of, they're similar, but to the point where it's almost like I can see myself, like, I would be very frustrated if I speak, like maybe if I would speak, but that's interesting also. But if I'm like, if I spoke like one of those languages, I'd probably be like, how come I don't understand this? Because it's like, it sounds and it looks like written, like it looks so similar to a language that you already speak, that you would be like, oh my God, I'm so frustrated. Why? How come I don't understand this, or I can't really pronounce it properly? Because I should be able to understand this, because again, it's very similar, but at the same time, it isn't really. But I think something interesting is that, again, it's like for standard German speakers, I think it's hard to understand. Just again, maybe written is different, and maybe they'll able to like maybe parse it a little bit better. Like, oh yeah, I can maybe see where you're coming from. Maybe I'm not gonna understand like every word, but I can I get context clues, and then I'm gonna like I think I know what this means. But maybe when they're speaking, again, because the accents are so different, it's like, no, I don't really understand what you're saying. It sounds similar, but not really. But I think from the opposite side, the Swiss German, when they are speaking or when they're listening to people speaking standard German, I think they have an easier time understanding it, actually. And I know that he, at the end, like he asks the question, and I would be super interested, like I'm super interested to actually see, like what's the answer? I'm so curious to find out. But I would think, again, that I think Swiss German speakers have an easier time understanding like standard German speakers. Because also I think they also know it, because apparently there's like a standardized sort of like, there's a standardized Swiss sort of like common German or whatever that they sort of like tend to use in order to, again, to sort of like you standardize the whole country, because again, everyone speaks like different dialects depending on where they're from. But it's different, but I think they'll know, like even if it's just like speaking, like when they're listening to someone speak German, I think they'll be like, yeah, I know what you mean. Maybe I'm not gonna like, and maybe they'll reply probably in Swiss German. But the point is, I don't think like standard German speakers are going to be able to understand when they're replying. I think it's sort of like the case with, I think there's another language, I think Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese and Portuguese from Portugal. I think it's similar, that I think I've heard people say that it's something, it's like the same language, but the way there's words that are very different from each other, and to the point where two speakers from, they technically should be able to understand each other, but that's not the case, because again, like the accent is so different that at the end of the day, it's like, hold on, I think I know a little bit of what you're saying, but I can't really carry on a full-on conversation with you, because again, it's not just the accent, as we've seen, it's the structure as well. I think, seeing this, I think Swiss German, it sounds very hard to learn, I have to say. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that was just my impression, but I think it's so confusing, the fact that they have to like use the verb like go like twice. That's like, why do you do that? It's so weird to me. Why would you like add it on? I get with the things, like you have to like add it on because they're like referring, and they have to like repeat the things, like you're repeating like the like the subject, because there's different to the subject, so you have to like the verb has to like it's conditioning the subject and also like the other part of the sentence. Like, oh my god, it's so complicated, why do you do it twice? There was one sentence that it was actually like literally that it was twice like on a row, so it's like, wait, why would you do that to yourself? I don't really understand why. I would love to know why that is, the actual, like, how come that came to be, because standard German doesn't have it. But it's kind of, it's so weird to me. Like, it's so trippy seeing like the word twice. It's like, wait, why is it twice? Like, I already get it, like, so different. But again, it sounds hard. I don't know if this was just my impression, but maybe it's just because they're comparing it to like German. I don't know. I don't really know. But it sounds like a very hard language to understand, like when someone speaks to you, like that language I think sounds hard. And also like when you're like actually learning it and you're like learning how to write it, I think it's also like it sounds like a hard language to learn in general. Maybe that's why people go with like standard German, because it's like, it's easier. I think you're gonna have an easier time learning this. But yeah, this was very interesting, and yeah, it's also like very, because obviously it isn't a surprise that they have like so much French influence, because like I think there's like parts of it that also speak French. But like I said, I would love to know if the French speaking parts also have a hard time understanding, like, well, it's the other way around. Maybe they know like French, normal standardized French, but I'm wondering if like people from Paris can easily understand the French speaking parts of Switzerland. I would love to know, because I would guess it's the case as in like standard German. They probably are not going to be able to like really parse. Like, I think I know what you mean, but I'm not gonna be able to like reply to you or actually tell you like 100% certainly like, oh, I know what you're saying. But again, it's like, I know it's not a huge surprise, because again, they already have like, there's like half German, half French. But I think at some parts also they speak Italian, I think, or maybe not. But I think also there are some parts that speak Italian, I think. But most of it is just French and German. But it's so funny how a lot of the things are super, super French, to the point where it's just like, even like the accent, it's not French itself, but it's different. I think maybe like the different sort of like tones that we're hearing, or at least that I'm hearing, is that I'm listening to like the French part. And that's why it's so like weird to me. But it's funny that even there are a lot of like, they have a lot of French influence. So I think at some point maybe it's just like a mix between some words in French and obviously some words in German. But I think also I saw some that maybe less influenced by English. I think German has more things, standard German probably has more things in common with standard English, or normal English, and I think probably Swiss German has less English. I think, maybe, I don't know. That was my impression. But yeah, this was incredibly interesting, and like I said, now I'm adding like Swiss German to a language that I think it's very hard to learn. But that was it for today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.